So you're beginning to see the pressure being implemented or being felt by certain companies. In America are kind of leading the way in this. So there's massive organizations in America, companies, Harley Davidson, McDonald's, and many, many others, who are beginning to scrap their DEI, the diversity, equality, or equity and inclusion programs, which is essentially to give preferential treatment to people who aren't white. That's what it boils down to, right? People who aren't white, people who aren't straight, all that kind of thing, and people who aren't male, right? So the trifecta of evil as it is being posed to the Western world, right? And people are pushing back against this because it is what it is. It is racist, right? And when the rubber hits the road, I would imagine there's no court case that could be won in favor of DEI. Or in Ireland, we call it positive discrimination, right? Which is nonsense, right? It's a nonsense. So this is an article just speaking about Australian workers and the increasing levels and percentages and rates of people who are opposed to this sort of thing because it is affecting them, right? And it will affect their children, right? If they're on the wrong side of the coloured fence, right? And you're seeing this in Ireland now too as well. So you're seeing News Talk, who have been promoting this nonsense for years, all of a sudden do a U-turn and say, is the era of woke finished, right? And by woke, they mean this sort of thing. The relentless pursuit of punishment towards Western people, i.e. white people, the white race, right? So you're seeing this. Meta is another one. Facebook are also scrapping, in practice at least, perhaps not explicitly, but they're scrapping their DEI programs. And in Ireland, as I said, there's newspaper articles, there is News Talk speaking of it. And I was reading another newspaper article today where they're talking about the same thing. And what you have is journalists who are now trying to get ahead of this, right? And say, well, I've been thinking for years that this was really unfair and this was really wrong. However, I understand the sentiment in it, and I support the sentiment and the good intentions of these programs. But I've been kind of opposed to them really morally, right? And I would suggest this. People who've been backing this stuff are now scared because the momentum that has been behind it by organizations like BlackRock, who are one of the biggest movers of money and influence in the world, their support for this political, social, legal, and racial programs, the support for that is dwindling, right? So the financial backing is turning into a castle built on sand now. And there's people, journalists especially, right, people in the media, who are trying to backtrack out of this while still saving a bit of face and trying to do a total about face by declaring that they weren't really always in support of it, right? I would suggest this. If we don't want to see something like this happen again in the near future, people who have been promoting this, who have been implementing this, and who have been punishing people based solely on them being white, male, or straight, if not all of those things together, then at least one of those things. These people need to be punished. And what I mean by that is politicians need to be forced out of their positions, never to be given positions of authority or power over people again, because they're disgusting. They're morally inferior to the average person, anyone who's been promoting this nonsense. And any media outlets, any journalists, or anybody in the media, they need to be sued. Any employers, any business owners who've been implementing this stuff, they need to be sued as well, because they were perfectly okay in actively engaging in the erosion and the destruction of people's professional lives, personal and social lives, based on their own political ideology. So I don't think it's good enough just to see people publicly make a show of themselves by declaring that, well, actually, I was never really about that stuff, right? I just pushed it and promoted it. I don't think that's enough. I think you need to see people lose the very things that they forced others to lose based on based on their hatred, however manufactured or real it was, of white people. You know, I don't think it's enough for us to just leave these people off the hook. I would love to see an avalanche of civil cases being brought, and criminal cases, if and when needed, right? I would love to see an avalanche of it. Open the floodgates. Let these people bear the consequences of the decisions that they've made along the way. That's the only way of eradicating this sort of weakness from people, is to a global showing of the natural consequences of this disgusting ideology.